Why, hello, friends and family. Welcome to the good place and happy Independence Day to you. Please stay safe out there. Now, if you're new to the channel, I'll let you know this is where you come for some hope and encouragement when you're battling life's trials and tribulations. Who knows what those are, right? And today we're going to get very real talking about anxiety. But before we dive in, I do want to let you know that next week I plan on having a very special guest on the show, someone who knows all about struggles. She is battling stage 4 breast cancer right now. And if that weren't enough, honestly, that's just the tip of the iceberg pertaining to her story of struggle, of trials, of hardships. And yet, through it all, she has learned the secret to finding joy and spreading it to others. And you'll pick up on it when you listen next week. I do hope you will tune in for that. Hopefully, I get that interview later this week. So, to set the stage for today's topic, and before sharing with you some of my own personal struggles with anxiety, I'd like for us to take a look at a very famous painting together. This is Rembrandt's Christ in the Storm on the Sea of Galilee. It depicts the passage found in several of the Gospels, and I'm going to read just a few verses from Matthew chapter 8. He then got into the boat, followed by his disciples. Suddenly, a great storm came up on the lake, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves, but he was asleep. And so they went to him and awakened him, saying, "Lord, save us, we are going to die." He said to them in reply, "Why are you so frightened, O you of little faith?" Then he stood up and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. They were amazed and asked, "What sort of man is this whom even the winds and the sea obey?" Now, the disciples were understandably filled with fear. And if we were to put ourselves in the boat, much like Rembrandt did you know that? If you take a close look, I just got to divert here. If you take a close look at the picture, you will notice there are 14 people in the boat. Jesus, the 12 disciples, and one more, and that is Rembrandt. He is the one holding on to his hat, looking out. And he often did this with his paintings. He put himself in the painting, and it's really a form of something known as visio divina. I've also heard it called visio divina. Sorry, can't even say it that way. Visio divina, which actually means divine seeing. And it's a form of contemplative prayer where you look at an image, a picture, a painting, and you place yourself in it and you kind of ask yourself prayerfully, what's going on here? What would I be seeing? What would I hear? That sort of thing. So anyway, I find that kind of interesting that he did that. But anyway, I digress. If you were to put yourself in the boat, there is probably someone that you see in this painting that you would relate to. Maybe you respond to fear and uncertainty much like some of the fishermen that you see who are fighting for dear life, trying to take down the sails, trying to take hold of the rudder, taking matters into your own hands, trying to control the situation. Maybe you are like the ones in front of Jesus who are probably pretty angry. They're upset, they're angry, they're mad at him. Like, how could Jesus allow them to even be in this situation if he's capable of changing things? Why doesn't he? And sometimes we do that when we are faced with the unknown. We get angry at God, we get angry at others, we lash out at them because we're just upset, we're furious. Maybe you're like the one who's heaving over the side of the boat. No doubt the waves made him sick, but he could be filled with worry. And sometimes we get so consumed with worry, with concern, with fear that we become physically ill. There's been a lot of research showing that worry and stress can actually cause things like cancer and other diseases. And maybe you are like the one that you can barely see in this picture. You really have to look for them. I don't even know that you can see it on your screen right now. But you're like the disciple who is kneeling before Jesus in worship, trusting him despite all the chaos going on around him. Now, while fear and anxiety are related, they are different. And I want to stress that to you and point that out to you. Actually, if you take a look at the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, according to it, fear relates to a known or understood threat, whereas anxiety follows from an unknown, expected, or poorly defined threat. I tend to think of someone who is about to cross a bridge and they become fearful because they think, what if it falls? What's the likelihood that the bridge is going to fall? That's just one example of anxiety. And chances are someone watching right now struggles with anxiety because according to the CDC, 27% of Americans aged 18 and older struggle with anxiety. So know that if you're struggling with that, you are definitely not alone. And I happen to be one of those people, and I'll share some of my story with you. So I never really knew what anxiety was until I was in my 40s in 2016 when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Now, it was not the diagnosis that caused me to experience anxiety, but it was a medication I was put on. So in December of 2016, I had a mastectomy and I was given pain medication following the surgery, thankfully. And it was an opioid, but it caused, I said I was getting real, severe constipation. We're talking weeks of constipation. And so the doctor decided to switch my medication to something called Demerol, which has been around a long time, but really isn't used very much anymore because of the side effects associated with it. And I was on this medication, taking it as prescribed, and I was waking up one morning feeling very, very groggy, very out of it. But it's as if I heard this voice in my head that said, "Wake up, Kim, wake up. Don't let yourself go back to sleep. Get up, get up. You've got to get up." And I was fighting it. I was so tired, so sleepy. But I finally kind of came to, and I felt as if my body was on fire inside. I knew something was dreadfully wrong. I ran to the bathroom. I looked in the mirror. My face didn't look right. It was kind of wavy. I was probably hallucinating. I don't know, but something was dreadfully wrong. And I told my family, I've got to get to the hospital. You need to call an ambulance. It was almost as if I was overdosing on this drug, even though, like I said, I was taking it as prescribed. I don't know if my body wasn't metabolizing it. I don't know. But I ended up going to the hospital. Essentially, they said, this has just got to run through your system. And that was that. It did. And I never took it again. But that incident, excuse me, which I honestly thought I was going to die. I thought I was having a horrible reaction to this drug and wasn't going to make it. It sparked major anxiety. I couldn't sleep at night. When I shut my eyes, I saw these dark visions. Um, I became scared during the day, especially when the afternoon rolled around, when the sky started to change. And I just felt, it's hard to describe anxiety, but I just felt upset inside all the time. And things that should have brought me joy did not. And my mom, who was staying with me at the time, she said, "Kim, you're kind of reminding me of a dementia patient, especially with getting so upset and agitated toward evening." And I eventually had to go on Ativan to help. It got to where even while on Ativan initially, but I couldn't go anywhere that I was not comfortable. And I was only comfortable going to, I think, three places: the grocery store, because I went to the grocery store quite often. And thankfully, we had a nice new Publix. So that's a good store to go to. My kids' school, because I went there daily to drop them off and pick them up. And then my plastic surgeon's office. Those were the only places I could go and not feel anxiety. Sadly, I have to tell you that even going to mass, going to church caused major anxiety. And I think it almost embarrassed my family, especially my husband, because sometimes we get there early as a family and one of the ushers would come along and ask us if we wanted to take up the gifts. And I would look horrified, struck with fear. No, because I couldn't stand the thought of walking up in front of people and having eyes on me. And so my husband would always look like, "Can you do it?" And I was like, "No, And he would politely tell them no. And I know they must have thought I was so rude. Like, what's wrong with this chick that she can't take the gifts up with their family? And I didn't like it for the fact that, I kind of took that away from my children because they were younger. And that's always something nice to do and to be a part of the mass in that way. But I just couldn't do it. And I recall on one occasion, um, taking my children out. It was spring break, and we went to lunch, and I was taking them to the movie theater to watch. What was that? I was going to share with you, and I can't even think of what it is. It was Batman with like the Legos. I don't know. Anyway, the whole time I was we were at the restaurant, I just felt upset and on the verge of tears, and I couldn't wait to get out of there, but I still had to endure a movie. So I took him to the theater. And I think at one point I did have to step out and just let the tears fall and then go back in. And it was frustrating to me because I thought I should be enjoying my time with my family, enjoying time with my children, and I just couldn't. I wanted to be at home and nowhere else. I didn't want to go anywhere. And this went on for years, as well as taking Ativan, which helped a little bit and certainly helped me sleep. But I can remember a turning point that I had, and that was a few years ago in 2019. We moved to Michigan, and I had to take my kids out. I took the girls out. Actually, my son didn't go shopping for school clothes. And we had gone to a mall where we walked around store after store. And after we were done, I asked them if they wanted to go to lunch. And they said yes. And we went. And I remember the thought, I was sitting there and it came to me, Kim, you're having a good time. And I couldn't believe it. I had gone to two places because that was another thing. If I could force myself to go places before, but I could only manage to go to like one place and then I had to rush home. So I went to two places and I actually enjoyed it. Now, as we were leaving, I think one of the kids asked if we could go somewhere else. I said, no, I had reached my limit. I went to two places, but that was progress. And it has gotten better. And now I can tell you that I have anxiety rarely. Now, I did have it a couple weeks ago. And what triggers it? Absolutely nothing. It just comes out of the blue. My husband was here. He had been out of town working and he was back, and we went to breakfast, and it just came over me on the way there. And the tears kind of started to fall a little bit. And I thought, oh my goodness, I hope a waitress doesn't come over. Please don't come over right now. It's so embarrassing. So, why am I sharing this very personal stuff with you? Well, it's because I know what it's like to feel alone in a situation and how much better we can feel sometimes just hearing that someone else is going through the same thing, that we're not alone. And I can tell you that when I worked in morning radio, the most response feedback I ever got from folks was when I shared my stories of struggling with depression and anxiety. Because sadly, in Christian circles, often when we reveal that we struggle with something like that, we start getting the questions of, well, what are you doing wrong? You must not be praying enough. You're not reading your Bible enough. You're doing something wrong. You have sin in your life. What's wrong with you? And I just want to provide you hope, to let you know you are not by yourself. Many others struggle with this, myself included. And my prayer is that if you struggle with it greatly, because I know it can be debilitating with some people, my prayer is that it will lessen with time like mine did. I love this verse from Second Corinthians, which says, Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercy and the God of all consolation. He consoles us in all our afflictions and thereby enables us to console others in their tribulations, offering them the consolation with which we ourselves are consoled by God. So, the Lord, He has given me consolation. He's in my boat. And I hope that I can provide you some little bit of consolation. And if you have not sought help, if you are struggling with anxiety, with fear, or you're just having a hard time coping with life right now, I think a lot of people still are following COVID, especially. Know that there's help available. Reach out to a mental health professional. They are there for a reason. Maybe you just need to be heard. You need to be able to talk to someone. Maybe you do require medication. I was on Ativan for 5 years, and I finally just kind of weaned myself off of it. But maybe you need something, even if it's just for a season. Even changes in diet can help, like limiting caffeine. That's a huge one. The thing is, do not suffer in silence. There is no need to do that. Seek help. Now, I'd like to go back before we end to the painting, which, by the way, if you did not know this, was stolen. This masterpiece of Rembrandt's was stolen in 1990, and to this day, no one knows where it is. But if you look closely, okay, if we look closely at this painting, notice that the disciples had their back to the sun. So we see that as the waves are crashing against the boat, there's all this chaos going on. The Lord is already performing a mighty work, and they're oblivious to it. Their backs are to the clouds that are breaking, that are parting as the sun is streaming in. And that is often how it is. The Lord is at work in your life, in my life, and we don't recognize it initially. Sometimes I think we can be lulled into thinking that life is perfect, that it's supposed to be perfect, and it's not. The fact is, storms come. Maybe you're not facing one now, but maybe you are. Maybe you are in the middle of a storm. Remind yourself that the Lord, He's in your boat, and He wants what is best for you. And we together just need to learn to trust in Him and to obey, just like the wind and the sea. Well, that is all I have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to The Good Place. If anything resonated with you, you appreciated anything, please give it a thumbs up, like it, share it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, because that really does help other people find it with the way the YouTube algorithms, they're not logarithms. What are logarithms? Anyway, that's how it works. So if you would do that, and I am going to share with you one other little video. I promise I'm not going to do this every time, but we happened to be in Cleveland seeing family a couple weeks ago, and I got this video of us at a very nice location, and I put together this video. I'm sure only my mom will watch it, but at least she'll appreciate it. God bless and have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.
Good job.